Okay, welcome to CPG Vibes number 190. We are slowly crawling towards 200. I had to get some dust off this microphone because it's been a minute since we've used it. But welcome everyone. We've got a special guest, Shannon Peffley, joining us shortly. Gavin, what's going on, man?
Dude, it's been a hot minute. I'm happy to be back. It's been, I don't know, almost a month, I feel like, since we had our last podcast, and a lot of holidays and Christmas, New Year's. I'm excited to be back, Wade. How was your break?
It was good. You know what's funny is the last episode we did was coming back from a break, I think, which was Thanksgiving, and then we just turned around and took another break. So it was good. The holidays were good. We didn't do a lot. Stayed close to home. I know you did some traveling. Got a little cold. Got a little snow. Yeah.
Yeah,
How
my
was
God. I
that?
mean, Wade, we drove from Charlotte or the greater Charlotte market all the way up to Michigan. It was a 2-day trek there and back. Drove through all sorts of weather, all sorts of wind, which was great. It's definitely challenging with the twins, and we also brought our 2 dogs. So,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
it was definitely a lot. But, with the holidays being, like, on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday type thing, I mean, what was the point of us trying to have 5 people on a podcast?
Right, right. I know. Yeah, well, and I don't know about your email during that little break, but it was very quiet. So
Yes.
it's good to be back. If you're just joining us for the first time, if you're long time joiner, viewer, whatever the case is, comment, put some comments in here for us, put some questions. Like I said, we got a special guest joining us. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, search for CBG Vibes, give us a thumbs up, give us 5 stars, whatever it is, subscribe, like, follow, all that stuff. But yeah, do all that stuff for us. But we're back. I mean, we've got some guests lined up coming in the coming weeks. Aside from life that happens, we'll be here as usual every week. And yeah, we got a good slate of guests lined up. We got Fancy Fair coming up this weekend, which I know you're not going to be at, but our guest is going to be at. So excited to talk to him about that. But yeah, drop some stuff in the comments and let us know you're here and listening and watching. And what else do we need to touch on before we bring our guest in, Gavin?
I think that's really it. I think, I don't know if you have any New Year's resolutions, Wade, but mine's to get back into a routine this year. The last year for us obviously has been transitioning into parenthood, being a dad, being present. And I think this year for me, it's just kind of refocusing on trying to get into some old habits that I used to do, and I've started off the year all right. So I'm looking forward to trying to execute those.
Right on, right on. I can appreciate that, and I know, but whether it's work, whether it's personal, getting back in a routine. I know I disconnected somewhat from definitely from LinkedIn, a lot from just digital in general while I was off, and tried to be, in your point, present and just live life a little bit. And but all good things must come to an end. And the work week this week hit me like a truck, and here we are. But well, let's not keep everyone waiting here. Let's get our guest in here, and everyone, please welcome Shannon Peffley to the stage. Shannon, how are you? Good to see you, buddy. Oh, you're muted. Let
I
me
am
unmute you.
muted. There
There
you
you
go.
go. I unmuted you.
How are you
Shannon,
guys doing today? Happy New Year.
happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Awesome. Well, rather than us tell everybody about you, we thought it would be great for you to give a brief introduction of yourself, kind of who you are, where you've been, what you've done, and obviously today we're going to talk a lot about what you're working on lately.
Absolutely. I've been in the CPG world over 20 years. Started with my father's distribution business that he started back in 96. Worked alongside him for quite some time. Had my own brand for a little bit back in 2012 to 2016. Learned a lot about owning a brand and being a founder and all the mistakes that you can make doing that. In my 20s, I knew everything. So, didn't ask for help. Wish stuff like this was around during that time. But after that, worked with a couple different brands along the way, did some fractional work, some brokerage work. And this past June, I stepped away from the industry. Wanted to spend some time with my kids over the summer, I was doing a half Ironman, And I honestly thought I was finally out of the industry, and I was like, yes. And then as the Ironman was approaching, I was like, what am I going to do after the Ironman? Like, no idea. And talking to a couple people, they were like, figure out some of the pain points, figure out what, the issues are in the industry. And one of the biggest issues that I realized was, brands want to get in front of buyers. But one of the easiest ways to get in front of buyers is at trade shows. Problem with trade shows is they're so expensive. And that's where CPG Xperience came from. And, I offer some trade show programs. And in the midst of the trade show program with getting brands, to work with me at different trade shows like Fancy and whatnot, one of the trade shows were like, no, we don't want you at our trade show. And if you don't like that, go do your own trade show. So out of that, we have the CPG Xperience trade show coming in Savannah, Georgia in 2027. So
wow, very cool.
And that is, I've learned a lot about the trade show industry over the last couple months. It is not cheap. It's very expensive. Just to put it in perspective, to rent out the Savannah Convention Center, we're talking close to $500,000 just to rent out the building.
Wow.
So
Wow. And that's spread over how many days?
So I wanted to, the biggest thing with the show is I want to do it differently. I want to do it a lot differently than all the other trade shows that are out there. I want to give everyone an opportunity. So this trade show is going to be for emerging brands only. Basically, if you're doing over 12 million a year in sales, I really don't want you at my trade show. And it's not that I don't like you, it's that I want to give these little guys an opportunity to get in front of the right people.
And Shannon, when you say 12 million, is that 12 million cumulative, or is it 12 million retail, or is it a combination of both D2C, Amazon, all that jazz?
More so on the retail, just because, in the e-commerce side, that's a little, some people are doing a couple $1 million just in e-commerce, and they're still not getting the validation that they need, but more so on the retail side, because that's the buyers that are going to be at the show with that. But, like I said, the biggest thing with the show is I want to do it differently. The weekends coming in, right now I'm driving to California and it's Friday and the show doesn't start till Sunday. There's no reason why shows can't be during the week, during work hours. So the goal is September 14th, 15th, and 16th of 2027, where brands can come in, Sunday and Monday and set up, and then they have time to tear down. But, we're going to be working on hosting buyers, getting buyers to come out. They have to, of course, check the boxes the same as they do with some of the other places. Now, mine aren't going to be as like, hey, you have to hit 100 booths, because that's just unrealistic. Mm-hmm. But I want those meetings with buyers and brands to be engaging. I want it to be fun. I want it to be basically pre-COVID style event where, there's value out of it. I'm not going to be charging an arm and a leg for booth space. The average booth space probably going to be about $2,500, give or take. I'm actually going to do it on a scale. So if you basically from 0 to 1.5 million, your booth space is going to be this much, 1.5 to 3 million. And so it's going to be on a scaled level with, the larger brands, maybe paying north of, $3,000 to $4,000. But, to pay $10,000 for a 10 by 10 booth space, you're not going to get a value out of that at a trade show.
Right. And I did put the link up for your LinkedIn page here, just so everybody, if you're not already following CPG Xperience and Shannon, encourage you to do so, and so you can get more information on everything we're talking about. And Robert Kogan, good to see you, Robert, and Melissa, by the way, I see you in there. Robert brings up, sounds like a selling show where show deals will be offered. And I think that's a good segue. Something I was going to ask you is, going back, I've attended, there's a difference between shows, right? There's selling shows and there's just kind of like show and tell, if you will. And what's your mindset with what you're trying to create? Is it a selling show, meaning, are deals going to happen there, or is it more of a, hey, this is the brand and introductory? What's your thought as far as that goes?
So it's actually going to be a twofold selling show. And when I say that is, one, I want deals to get done there. There's no point of going and not having deals being done and just shaking hands and stuff. So I want deals to get done. I want brands to be able to sell to, hey, place an order. We can drop ship it in 2 weeks, if the store allows it to. But I definitely want deals to get done there. The other part of the selling side is I want to open up the last day of the show to consumers. I want consumers to be able to walk the show and be able to buy leftover product that you have, instead of giving away samples and giving away, here's to the food bank. And here, I want, we're going to advertise it. We're going to get some influencers and stuff to be able to walk the show. And, it's not going to cost an arm and a leg to get into either. I want people to go to the show and be able to see the new brands, see emerging brands, and have the brands get value out of it as well.
Nice. I see Gavin's head. I see his wheels turning.
No, it's
Go
all
ahead.
good. Wade, I was going to ask Shannon, like, what is your strategy when it comes to the buyers, like the hosted buyers and all that?
I mean, it's going to be a lot of reach out. We're going to offer, flights and hotel and accommodations. But again, there are going to be certain requirements of them. They have to hit so many booths. They have to, attend networking events. I want them to be engaging. I don't want this to be a free trip for them by any means. I just want it to be worth it for them, especially for them to trust and get to the show. I definitely want it to be value for them.
Nice.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think.
Go ahead, Gavin.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know if you thought this far ahead, but a question from Robert: what ticketing system do you plan to use?
I'm planning on using actually Map Your Show. It's the one that a lot of these other shows do use. I was just out in Houston. It's called Expo. It's an expo for expo creators, and I actually learned a ton there. But their system seems to be the one that has everything that I really want in it, to be allowing buyers and brands to communicate prior to the show, AI assistants. So that one has a lot of working parts that I like.
Nice.
Shannon, I really specifically like the timing of this show. I think mid-September is nice. It's like a nice breather from this summer. Wade and I talk about this all the time, but basically I think after Memorial Day through basically the end of July, I mean, there's trade shows almost every single week. And if you're a brand in a prominent position at that brand, you're more than likely going to quite a few of those, right? So you have Unify, you have KeHE, you have the Sweet Snacks Expo, BevNet is around that time. The list goes on, right? There's quite a few of those, which means a lot of travel. And I think the issue that I had with the new dates for Newtopia specifically is it's like right after all that stuff. And if I'm a retailer, you're looking at Unify, you're probably going to that specific trade show if you're a Unify account. And if you're a KE account, you're going to that specific Chicago event. But that's just a lot tied up in a very short amount of time. So I think the September timeframe works out really well, where it gives people time to breathe, take their PTO, all that jazz. Do you have any thoughts on is this going to be a permanent time slot for you, or is it going to change at all?
I'd like to keep it in September. Of course, a lot of that narrows down to where I can host it at. That was the other thing, that it's like, do you host it in the same place every year, or do you travel to different areas and host it in, new locations? So that's something that I haven't decided just yet. I like the idea of having it in different areas and moving the show around. But it is also nice to be in the same comfort of your, where you're familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then going back to the buyers thing, how many retailers would you like to see there? And like, what is your outreach going to be to those guys? Because obviously this is a new event, and when we talk about New Hope and Expo West and the Unify events and things like that, like those buyers have account managers who, whether it's Unify or KeHE, who are sponsoring their events anyways. How are you going to reach out to a lot of these retailers?
Yeah, so a couple different approaches. One, I'm starting to assemble a team of people to help out, advisors and stuff, because I don't know everything, as I did in my 20s. So I am reaching out and getting the right people to support me with this. One thing that I'm going to do a little bit different with the trade show is any distributors that are interested in being at the show, I will give them free booth space,
Wow.
with the intention of they have to reach out to all of their retailers that they supply and make sure that they get there or get so many retailers from their distribution to the show, in some capacity. So I think that will help, one, drive brands so that brands can say, hey, we'll have an opportunity to get in front of this distributor at the show. And then also the retailers that purchase from those distributors will know that they're distributors at the show as well.
Nice.
Nice. I think that's really good. I would probably throw brokers into that too if brokers are
I,
interested.
I will have brokers too. I encourage brokers, even broker booths, not that they would really need it because the booth space is going to be so affordable, but I'm open to broker pavilions. If a broker has, 8 brands that want to set up in one area so that you don't have to walk buyers all around the world, at different booths, we'll help you manage that.
Nice. We have a question from Robert. If you're going to reach out to Canadian buyers.
I was actually talking to somebody today from Canada about that. I'm not opposed to it. Emerging brands, are everywhere. So, I'm not biased. I don't want to be a gatekeeper to the industry, to getting brands exposure. Again, my whole premise is affordable and accessible. So.
Right. Nice. And you said Savannah, so walk us through the thought process. Why Savannah? What?
I knew that question was coming.
I had to ask it because I know, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Newtopia was supposed to be there, and then they moved it to Denver, and now they've never brought it back. Yeah.
It was. So that was kind of my little snub to Informa, because they're the ones who told me to go do my own show. So
you said that. We didn't pry that out of you. You said that.
I know that, but they won't, look, with working with these current trade shows that I'm doing, I want to be treated the same as every other brand that's there and everyone that's doing what I'm trying to do. But for some reason, the way I'm trying to do it is different. And, Expo West won't let me be at their show. And, and that's what kind of pushed me to do this. And I was like, you know what? I went to Savannah. I looked around. I love the whole Savannah banana story with Jesse Cole and doing things different from the industry. And I just thought, hey, this is going to be perfect. I reached out. It made sense. It's a very expensive and intensive process, but at the same time, it can be very rewarding. One thing I'm doing very differently than most, with brands, is I'm going to take a percentage of all the profits and I'm going to give that back to the booths. So if we have a very successful show, I want the brands to feel that in some capacity, that they're getting value out of this. So, what that looks like, I'm probably looking, 25% of the profits go back to the booth program, and they can either take that out or roll that over into their future booth space.
Yeah, you talk about Savannah Bananas, and not everyone's a sports fan, but if you want to talk, Gavin, in his marketing wisdom, titled this episode "Disrupting the CPG Industry." And if you want to talk about disruption, I don't know if you could give a better example than Savannah Bananas. I mean, this is like I always refer to them kind of as like the modern day Harlem Globetrotters as far as what they've done for baseball. And their model, they're selling out everywhere they
Every
go.
stadium. There's a wait list. There's a wait list a mile long on the Savannah Bananas, and their thing is affordable too, right? Like like their whole business model is fantastic.
Right.
And I actually reached out to them to try to get them to let me host a game while we're there in Savannah. But again, their whole thing is fans first, affordable for all fans. So to shut everybody else out and just let us have a stadium for a game, which, hey, they're sticking to that fans first. It's the same as if I told Canadians they're not allowed at my show. But it's accessible to all. So, but I did try to approach the Savannah Bananas and talk to Jesse Cole's team.
Nice.
Wait, I see this comment from Melissa. I think this is really worth reading.
Go for it.
Is there a platform to show an emerging brand with it being a selling show to help them understand the sales needed for ROI with their participation? Just curious, may help set goals, sales goals, and targeting.
So I am going to have, once we get a lot of the back end stuff set up for people to register, I want this to be hands-on for the CPG Xperience team. I want to be able to help these brands be as successful as possible. I want to, host, a lot of, even like Fancy Expo, all these guys that host shows. There's a whole back end that allows brands to communicate with buyers, but I don't think a lot of the booth spaces understand that and understand how to connect with people that are going to be showing up. And that's something that I really want to help educate. We're going to be running some webinars. We're going to be, doing whatever we can to set these brands up for the best success for a show that they can.
Awesome.
And Shannon, with any show, whether it's ingredients or any of these other service providers, are they going to be able to purchase booths?
So I've been back and forth on that, and I was actually thinking about maybe having a service provider show like the day before that Monday while brands are setting up, that they can walk up there and talk to service providers and, offer that at a discounted space, like in one of the other halls there. Just something to that extent. Look, at the end of the day, the service providers are what helps these brands drive. But something else that I am working on to segue into that is we are working on service provider conferences where we're going to try to pull, 20 to 30 brands and maybe 10 to 15 service providers across different categories and hold a 2-day, conference where brands and service providers can connect with each other. It's a very educational session for the brands. They can get value out of it. And, because a lot of these brands, as they're scaling, usually by the time they realize they need some type of service provider, it's too late. So that's something where we really want to help be proactive about that and get them in front of the right people ahead of time.
Yeah. And like Wade and I talk about all the time on this show, especially with emerging brands, like early on is when you need the most help, you need the most guidance, and you need to understand what you're getting yourself into from either a distribution standpoint, deduction standpoint, all the variables that they're not going to be clear on from day one. And then as they scale, they're going to need more of those assets. They just might not know it. So I think that, having that ability, especially for those brands that are 0 to 12 million in sales, that'll be a huge help, or can be a huge help.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, and I see a lot of these brands start, and the person that's starting them has usually been successful in some other past life that they have, and sometimes they let their ego get in the way of asking for help. And the one thing that I've realized here in the CPG community is there's a lot of people out here that are genuine, that do really want to help. And there are a few that are just in it for the money, in it for, hey, look at me. But there are a lot of people in this industry that really do want to help brands grow in this industry.
Yeah, I think that I think that's 100% true. I mean, even as a category manager and competing retailers, I mean, like, you'll have buyers who form relationships, and sometimes you need to trade industry secrets a little bit, or what works for this retailer. And if the category manager or director or VP can pry something out that's going to make that company better, I think that's useful. Even on the trade show booth side in my past, like, those people who you're next to for a day or two, you're gonna talk quite a bit, and more than likely you're gonna talk shop. And if you can learn some things from your booth mate or someone from across you, that's always going to be super beneficial. So, and you're right, like, there's probably like 5% of people don't want to see you succeed, but the other 95% do.
Okay, we got
100%.
something from Rich Moniz from Rich Insights. Even established brands aren't always aware of amazing, powerful tools like eye tracking, their package design, ads, or POS material. So, Robert said 500K for Savannah Bananas. Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I talked to them. They won't sell out. They won't just let me do a CPG experience at the show there. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's because they only have 5,000 seats in their stadium in Savannah.
Wow.
But to Richard's other point there, something that I want to have at my conferences is I want to get, a handful of buyers at those conferences, and, a brand be able to do a quick, like, 5-minute pitch to them.
Mhm.
And they're not actually pitching to the buyer to buy, but they're pitching it so that the buyers can give them feedback on their pitch and presentation. I'm like, hey, this is what buyers are going to be looking for in a presentation. This is what you should have. Your deck's too long, all of that. So that's something that I would like to have at our conferences in the future, as well as actual buyer feedback, but not something where the brands are selling to the buyer.
All right. Okay, let's see. We got another one from Melissa. How do you overcome if a category review deadline's missed and work ahead with a buyer to understand with an emerging brand to plug in post deadline at a show? 2027 is awesome to be ahead with communication, all parties on interested, all perspectives. I don't know, Gavin, if you want to touch on that and throw it to Shannon. Let me just read it one more time. How do you overcome if a category review deadline is missed and then work ahead with a buyer to understand with an emerging brand to plug it in post deadline at a show? So in other words, like I'm at a show, like, so we just finished up a category review, but then I'm at a show, and I see something that I really like. So how do you tackle that? I don't know, Gavin, if that's something maybe more for us or
Yeah, I
Shannon.
guess probably, but I think it's going to be dependent on the retailer, right? Like if a retailer has an open category review, then I'm sure that person will be more than happy to touch that, in 6, 8, 12 weeks, something like that. Um, if it's a category review a la like a Sprouts or a Whole Foods where it's pretty strict, or Fresh Market, and they're only touching that mod once a year, then you might be SOL, or you might have to really do some sweet talking to have them take a look at it. But that's just gonna be really super retailer dependent and buyer dependent on how much they like the product, to seeing what red tape that they have to cross to get that done at a retail level.
I think the other thing to think about too is that it's not always, planogram. You want to live in the planogram. You want to be on the shelf, all the time. I think, what one of the things that people lose sight of, or in search of the ongoing mainline set, is that often there are incremental opportunities, whether it's an end cap, whether it's a floor display, whether it's a seasonal opportunity, and in and out, any of the case, not all floor space is taken up, 24/7, 365. You can get into a seasonal program. You can get into especially when you get into the summer, oftentimes there's kind of, you roll from one holiday to another. You start with, you roll from Christmas to Valentine's to Easter, and then there's a little bit of a gap before you come back with, like, fall, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. In that summer time frame, yes, you have barbecue, you have all that stuff, but sometimes there's a gap there that, depending on the item, depending on what it is, that you can sometimes have an opportunity there. So I think, don't always have your focus and eyes on this is the only way to win, because you can, if you get someone excited enough at a show, that they really like the product, and you missed a category review, see if there are any opportunities. If not in the set, is what about this? What about this? What about this?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's some opportunities there.
Yeah, if a buyer likes your product, they'll find a way.
Yep, exactly.
And I tell brands too, like, there's always more than one way to skin a cat, and don't sleep on the shipper programs, because that's also a good way to put a variety of your SKUs in and see what actually really sells before it goes on to inline. So shipper programs can really be, I know shippers are expensive and the build out and all of that, but they can really give you a lot of data if done correctly.
Yeah, I agree with that, and you're seeing that a lot at Sprouts are utilizing even in their innovation sets PDQs, which for all intents purposes are mini shippers, right? But they give you an opportunity to tell a little bit more from the marketing perspective and some graphics and things like that. And Shannon, you're exactly right. They aren't cheap, but if you factor in that some of this expense, if you will, is marketing, it's a marketing spend to tell your story. Because if you just put something on the shelf, maybe there's a new item tag, maybe there isn't. But if you have an opportunity, as Gavin's saying, with a shipper or Shannon, the PDQ is kind of the same way. So there are more than one way to skin a cat. And I think, looking at those opportunities, I think it's wise. Again, it depends on the category too, right? We talk a lot about that as far as the amount of product within one of those units. You don't want to have a 500 count shipper. The goal is to get in.
Less is more.
Yeah,
Less is
yeah.
more,
And
in
we
my
always had, and I don't know, Gavin, I'd be interested to see if you dealt with this, but we were getting to a point, and I'm going back to my conventional days, where we were dating shippers when we put them on the floor, and we had a
Mm.
kind of a goal to get them off the floor because if it's sitting there, hopefully it isn't, but if it's sitting there for weeks, especially if it's in the same spot, you need that fresh look and be able to refresh it, especially on a conventional.
Yeah, I would say that shippers feel like they're kind of coming back a little bit. I know
Mhm.
going back to my retail days, I like to like if a brand had a really good looking shipper, we would restock the thing,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that would also mean that if the product's turning, if you're restocking it in store. But back to your point, Wade, like, yeah, there's some things where it's like, okay, this is tired and we need to get this in the back room as quickly as possible. And those are the things that you want less product on instead of more. I think from a quantity standpoint, again, depending on what category it is, you probably want something that holds somewhere between 36 and, if it's a beverage or if it's a bar, probably like 100 units. And if you have that, then, more than likely that shipper is going to be up a month, and hopefully you can turn that amount of product within that month. But then obviously you're probably going to have some markdowns associated with it afterwards if you don't.
Right. Robert's asking what does PDQ stand for? He just learned that POG means planogram. Depending on who you ask what PDQ stands for, it can be product displayed quickly or pretty darn quick. But for just telling it what it is, it's a display that you can take out of whatever overwrap it is and get it out on the shelf. It's like ready to go. It's like a ready
Yeah.
display. Think of Robert. This might make more sense to you. A display ready pallet, right? You just cutting the wrap off, dropping it on the floor. It's ready to go. Think of that, a fraction of that size. It's just a small display that you can just take out of the box and put it on the shelf. It's ready to go.
Yeah, and like Robert, a good example of that is Target's been doing quite a few of these PDQs in aisle. It's pretty prominent in the wellness category
Yep,
because you can do such better marketing of what style your product is. Sprouts done a really good job with the PDQs. I'm not sure if Whole Foods has dabbed into it yet, but I know Target and Sprouts are good examples of utilizing PDQs really well.
definitely, definitely. Excellent. Well, Shannon, so what other learnings have between your experience and kind of where you're going with this new project you're working on, and then also kind of current state? You mentioned a few of these things, but what other learnings through your career and or over these last few months since you left, your past role? Have you what are you trying to when we talk about disrupting CPG? What else is there that we haven't touched on yet? As far as what do you want to do differently, or what problem would you like to solve that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
The biggest thing is value. Whether you're a broker, whatever you're providing a service or providing something to this industry, like, bring value, be genuine about it, bring value to these brands. This industry is already expensive enough. And if you're going to charge a price for it, make sure they're getting that out of it. You can charge whatever you want. I'm okay with that, but just make sure that if you're going to charge, 10 grand to represent a brand and be their broker, make sure they're getting 10 grand worth of, value out of that. If you're going to charge $2,500, then make sure they're getting $2,500 worth of value out of it. But I've seen it so many times where and talk to so many brands where they're like, oh, well, we tried this, we just didn't get any value out of it. Or, oh, we went to this show, we didn't get any value out of it. And it's disheartening because it makes them gun shy for the next guy that actually is going to provide the value. And, they're not going to give them a shot because they've been burned so many times in the industry by other people and stuff. So just, and that's for service providers and everybody, just in general in life, give more than you take. So.
Yeah, and I think going back to this experience that we're talking about, I think from the brand side, being on the brand side, the most um, the most interesting thing that we're gonna want to see is, can we get wins or can we get POs? And like that's why I love those Unify and KE buying shows, because you can go there and you can kind of see your impact of how many cases you sold, or the people that you met that are interested in the product and the quick follow-up that you have after it. Um, so I think if you can bring some of that to this, I think then people are going to be super excited, because your pricing is going to be better than every other trade show out there. Shan, I guess I got a quick question. Like, what does success look like for you with this experience?
Um, I want people to walk away from it and say, hey, like, this was worth it. Like, that, I got something out of this. I met with, so and so, or we got this order, we got placement here. Um, I've learned. I'm going to give a shout out to Dan Crothers. If you guys don't know who that is, I've worked with him in coaching and stuff, and something that him and I have dialed in is that um, he I love giving people an experience. I love that wow factor of, like, something that people can talk about and remember and compare it to the other experiences. I want people to look, go to CPG Experience trade show and then go in 2028 to another trade show and be like, man, the experience was so much better. I got so much more value out of that than what I did here at this show or that show. So that's what I really want to create, is just that overall experience for brands and people.
And then I feel like this is going to be one of the obviously the harder thing to do is filling up that booth space, right? How are you going to how are you going to try to talk to all of the all of the brands out there? It's going to be an overtaking, right? There's thousands of them.
There are, and it starts this week. It's going to start this week. It's going to be getting out. It's going to be getting on podcasts like this. It's going to be, talking and, getting out there, spending money and stuff. I don't anticipate this trade show being cheap by any means. There's going to be a lot of time invested in it. LinkedIn is a powerful tool, having connections, there's a lot of ways out there. The one thing that I do not want to be a gatekeeping issue for brands is financials. Like, if they, hey, like, we're just not going to be able to afford it, or, hey, like, put a small deposit down. Like, I don't need 50% down. Like, put 25% down, and then, do it in payments, whatever we got to do. I don't want the financials to be the reason why you can't be at my show. And it's just, yeah, I don't want that to be the gatekeeping issue. So I think there's plenty of brands out there that will want to be there and want to show up. So I'm excited about that.
I think also, you not having this show this year, I think, is very nice, because it shows that you're not rushing it.
Right.
And if you're starting your um, reach out next week, it gives you quite a bit of time to figure out where your sweet spots are, and I'm gonna end up being. And then also, it's gonna give you a lot of valuable feedback from what you're hearing from the brands early on, or distributors, or brokers, and what the pitch is going to be, and what the pitch might need to change to.
So my goal is to get through Q1 here and open up registration for the show in either April or May or June for 2027 show. So that gives them a little over a year. It just opens up registration, and if there needs to be a payment plan or something, whatever it may be, but it's it'll be right after getting in front of a lot of these brands at trade shows, talking to them, understanding, seeing what some of these trade shows are doing this year that is different. I have a lot of cool ideas of what I want to do at the show. I had a lot of people reach out to me in different walks, whether they were buyers, whether they were former event planners and stuff. So I really believe that I have a good team that's gonna be helping me do this. And I encourage anybody else that wants to help as well. Please reach out. I don't know it all. I don't claim to know it all. I learned more in Houston at Expo about trade shows and what's involved in them than I wanted to. But at the same time, I want to make this happen. I'm gonna make this happen. I had to sign the contract with the convention center and put my non-refundable deposit down. So here we go.
Nice. Well, we talked going into this. We're going to have a abbreviated version today because we've got some things we got to attend to. But Shannon, it's been a pleasure talking to you. If someone wants to reach out to you, make contact with you about this or anything else for that matter, I posted CPG Xperience on LinkedIn. I posted your personal LinkedIn. But now, for those listening after the fact, audio wise, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I mean, LinkedIn, email, whatever. Even my cell phone, I post that all the time on LinkedIn too. I've drove across the country the last 2 days. I welcome phone calls, text messages. Feel free to reach out with anything. If I can connect you with somebody, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll connect you with the right person.
Awesome. Well, if you have any trouble finding Shannon Peffley, that's Peffley, reach out to Gavin, myself. We'll put you in contact as well. I look forward to seeing you this weekend. I'll be out there tomorrow myself. Gavin, it's been fun. Welcome back. I'll see you again next Friday, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you probably in 10 minutes. But Shannon, pleasure having you. Very admire.
Can I do one more shout out here?
Do it.
Yeah.
We're doing a networking event. Shelfmade has partnered with us, and we're doing a networking event on Sunday night at the Shout Dueling Pianos in San Diego. So if you haven't got your ticket, reach out to me. I'll hook you up. But would love to see you out there at that show.
Awesome. Shannon, awesome. And maybe we need a follow up here in a couple months and see how you're doing.
Yeah, I like
Sounds
it.
good.
I like it. Well, I admire what you're doing, and I'm not just saying this because Shannon's a personal friend, but when you talk about people being genuine in this space and just good people, they don't get any better than Shannon, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So I appreciate you, what you're trying to do, and look forward to watching you. And I'm sure I'm going hopefully be contributing in some fashion, either off the record or on the record. I look forward to collaborating with you any way we can. So, guys, it's been a pleasure. Have a great weekend, Shannon. I'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. We'll see you here next week.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.